In a rain-soaked alley, a 5-year-old girl quietly threw away old shoes one by one. A billionaire stopped thinking she was stealing. He was wrong. What she said next broke him. She wasn't hiding the shoes. She was hiding herself, so no one would see she had none. The Seaport District always looked clean from a distance. Glass towers, calm water, money moving quietly. Up close, it was different. Rowan Kincaid stepped out of his car before the driver could open the door. He needed air. Meetings had stacked too close together, words pressed against words, until nothing meant anything anymore. That was when he saw her. Behind a closed cafe in a narrow service alley washed gray by winter drizzle, a little girl knelt on the concrete. She was very small, 5 maybe, wrapped in an oversized yellow hoodie that had once belonged to someone else. She wasn't crying, she wasn't begging, she wasn't looking around to see if anyone noticed. She was sorting shoes, old ones, abandoned ones. Shoes people had tossed near a donation bin and forgotten. A cracked sneaker, a worn loafer with no pair, a child's shoe with the strap torn clean through. The girl lined them up carefully, toe to heel, as if they were waiting their turn for something important. Rowan stopped walking. He watched her lift each shoe with both hands. Not rushed, not careless. She brushed off dirt with her sleeves, straightened loose laces, then placed them into a faded cloth tote that looked far too heavy for her small shoulders. She whispered something under her breath as she worked. Rowan didn't move closer. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't interrupt. Something about the way she handled the shoes felt deliberate, like she believed they could feel being thrown away. Rain tapped softly against the alley walls. The city kept moving beyond the corner, unaware. Finally, Rowan spoke, keeping his voice low and calm. "Hey there," he said. "What are you doing?" The girl froze. Slowly, she looked up at him. Her eyes were wide but steady. Not afraid, just cautious, like someone who had learned early that attention could be unpredictable. "I'm fixing the goodbye," she said. Rowan felt something shift in his chest. "The goodbye?" he asked. She nodded once, serious. "Yes, sir." Rowan crouched a few steps away, making sure his hands stayed visible. He knew better than to crowd a child. He knew better than to assume anything. The girl went back to work. She separated the shoes into small piles beside her, some together, some set apart, some turned upside down as if they were finished. Rowan realized she wasn't choosing based on size or value. She was choosing based on damage. The worst ones went first. "You're very organized," Rowan said. She nodded, eyes still on the ground. "If I don't do it right, they get lost." "Lost where?" She pointed toward the open dumpster at the end of the alley. The lid rattled slightly in the wind. Rowan followed her gesture. His jaw tightened. "Do you need shoes?" he asked gently. She shook her head immediately. "No. No, I have feet," she said, as if that answered everything. Rowan noticed then her socks, thin, damp at the toes. She stood on the cold concrete without flinching, like discomfort was something she'd already decided not to talk about. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said Goldie. "Goldie," Rowan repeated carefully. "I'm Rowan." She nodded as if accepting the exchange as complete. He glanced around the alley. No adults nearby. No other children. Just a security light humming overhead. "Is someone with you today?" Rowan asked. "My aunt is working," Goldie said. "She said to wait where there's light." Rowan looked up. The harsh floodlight washed the alley in white. "And the shoes?" he asked. "Why take the broken ones?" Goldie lifted a child's sneaker with a cracked sole. She held it close, studying it like a problem that needed kindness. "Because the good ones get picked first," she said quietly. "After that, nobody looks anymore." Rowan swallowed. She added almost to herself, "The last ones disappear." Rain thickened, turning the alley slick and reflective. Rowan took off his coat. and held it open, not offering it directly, just creating shelter beside her. After a moment, Goldie edged under it, not touching him, just close enough to stay dry. "Who do you give the shoes to?" Rowan asked. Goldie pointed down the block. "People who walk slow." "That's a lot of people," Rowan said. She nodded. "Yes." She lifted a heavy work boot missing its pair. "This one belongs to a man who stands all day." Rowan didn't ask how she knew. He sensed she wasn't guessing. She was observing. Goldie reached into her tote and pulled out the smallest pair of shoes yet. Pink, soft, clearly worn but carefully cleaned. "These are not for the bin," Rowan said. Goldie shook her head. "No. For who then?" She paused. Her fingers tightened around the shoe. "For my cousin," she said. "She's learning to walk." Rowan felt the weight of that answer settle into him. "You're giving everything away," he said softly. Goldie looked up at him then. Really looked. "I throw away the old shoes," she said, choosing each word so nobody sees that I don't have any good ones. The sentence landed hard. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. Rowan turned his face slightly, giving himself a moment before responding. He felt something inside him crack, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. "You shouldn't have to hide," he said. Goldie shrugged. "It's okay, I'm good at quiet." Before Rowan could answer, footsteps echoed at the mouth of the alley. A shadow moved closer. Someone else had noticed. The footsteps stopped at the mouth of the alley. A man in a dark jacket stood there, keys clipped to his belt. Building staff, maintenance maybe. His eyes went first to the scattered shoes, then to the small girl holding a heavy tote. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice not loud, but sharp with suspicion. Goldie's shoulders stiffened. She didn't answer right away. Rowan straightened, positioning himself slightly in front of her, not blocking, not shielding, just present. "She's organizing abandoned donations," Rowan said calmly. "Nothing's being taken from anyone?" The man frowned. "Kids don't organize, they take. Where's her parent?" Goldie gripped the tote strap harder. Her knuckles went pale. "I didn't take," she said quietly. "They were already goodbye." The man stepped closer, reaching toward the tote as if to inspect it. Goldie instinctively took one step back. Rowan raised a hand, not aggressive, just firm. "Please don't touch her things." The man glanced at Rowan's coat, his watch measuring. "If you're involved, call someone official." "I don't want trouble." "That's reasonable," Rowan said. "I'll make a call." He stepped aside, keeping Goldie within his line of sight. He didn't lower his voice to whisper. He didn't dramatize. He simply spoke clearly, responsibly. "Community outreach, please," he said into the phone. "Also a community liaison officer." Goldie watched him, eyes flicking between Rowan and the man. Something in her expression shifted. Not fear exactly. More like calculation. "Are the shoes going to disappear?" she asked Rowan. "No," he said immediately. "Not while we're here." She nodded once, accepting that as a promise. Rain splashed into a shallow puddle near her feet. Goldie lifted one socked foot without complaint and placed it on a dry patch of concrete. Rowan noticed. He noticed everything now. The man stepped back, arms crossed, waiting. Goldie knelt again and resumed sorting, slower this time, but still precise. Rowan realized then this wasn't just kindness. It was a system she trusted more than people. Rowan stayed where he was, phone in hand, careful not to pace. He knew pacing looked like impatience. Impatience scared people. Goldie worked quietly beside him. "Goldie," Rowan said softly, "you did nothing wrong." She didn't look up. "I know." "You know, yes," she said. "But sometimes people don't know yet." The simplicity of it struck him. A police cruiser rolled slowly past the alley entrance and continued on. No sirens, no urgency, just presence. Moments later, a woman approached on foot. Mid-40s, warm scarf, calm posture. She carried a bright tote labeled "Community Closet." Inez Caro, she said gently, kneeling to Goldie's level without touching her. Hi, sweetheart. Goldie studied her face carefully. Inez continued, I help take care of donations so they go where they're needed. Rowan called me. Goldie glanced at Rowan, who nodded. She's here to help. Do you want to tell me what you're doing? Inez asked. Goldie held up the smallest sneaker. I'm fixing the goodbye. Inez's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. That's a kind thing to do, but you don't have to do it alone or outside. Goldie frowned. If I stop, the last ones disappear. They won't, Inez said. I promise we have a place for them. A uniformed officer arrived then, not rushing, not looming. Officer Dahlia Mercer. She stopped a respectful distance away. Hi, Goldie, she said. I'm here to make sure everyone is safe. Goldie nodded politely. Officer Mercer explained everything in clear, gentle language. No accusations, no pressure, just process. Rowan listened and stepped back when asked, immediately. Goldie noticed that. She looked up at him, surprised. You listened, she said. Yes, Rowan replied. That's important. Goldie considered this. Then she placed the tote gently on the ground and said, Okay, I can listen too. They moved together to the nearby community center doors. Open lights, warm people inside. Nothing hidden, nothing rushed. Goldie walked between Inez and Officer Mercer, clutching her tote like it contained something fragile. Because it did. Inside, the air smelled like soap and tea. A bulletin board near the entrance read, You belong here. Goldie stared at the words. Is that true? She asked quietly. Yes, Inez said. All the time. Goldie didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. They sat at a small table. Inez offered apple slices and crackers, placing them in the center, not pushing them toward Goldie. For anyone who's hungry, she said. Goldie took one slice, slowly, carefully. Officer Mercer made a brief call, confirming Guardian contact information. Rowan stood nearby, hands folded, respecting the invisible line drawn around the child. He felt it, how the law wrapped around her like a careful blanket. Goldie looked up at him suddenly. You're not leaving, she said. Not a question. I'm staying right here, Rowan replied. She nodded, satisfied. Inez opened the tote and examined the shoes with genuine care. You did good work, Goldie. Goldie's chin lifted slightly. I didn't take any, she said, just in case. I know, Inez replied. A phone rang. Officer Mercer smiled gently. Your aunt is calling back. Goldie froze. Is she mad? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. No, Officer Mercer said. She's worried. That's different. Goldie exhaled a small, shaky breath. Rowan felt his chest tighten again. The door opened. Someone was coming. The phone rested on the table between them. Officer Mercer put it on speaker, not for drama, but so Goldie wouldn't feel talked about behind her back. Hi, this is Officer Mercer, she said calmly. I'm with your niece, Goldie. She's safe. A pause. Then a woman's voice, tight with worry, breath still catching. Goldie, her aunt said. Baby Goldie didn't answer right away. She stared at the phone like it might disappear if she touched it wrong. I'm here, she finally said. I'm okay. The relief on the other end was almost visible. I was on shift, her aunt said quickly. I shouldn't have. I'm coming now. I'm leaving. Goldie nodded, even though her aunt couldn't see it. Officer Mercer guided the conversation gently, confirming details, timelines, reassurance. No blame, no judgment. Rowan watched Goldie's hands. They had stopped fidgeting. She was listening with everything she had. When the call ended, the room felt quieter. Not empty, just held. Inez slid a piece of paper toward Goldie and some crayons. Do you want to draw while we wait? Goldie shook her head. Instead, she asked a question no one expected. If I didn't come here, she said, looking at Officer Mercer, would the shoes still be mad at me? The words landed wrong and perfect at the same time. Officer Mercer knelt so they were eye to eye. Shoes don't get mad, she said gently. but people do worry when kids are alone. Goldie nodded slowly, processing. Rowan spoke for the first time in minutes. Goldie, why do you do this by yourself? Goldie thought carefully. Then she said, because if grown-ups see me doing it, they might stop me. And if they stop me, the last ones disappear. Silence spread through the room. Rowan felt the weight of it, not neglect, not cruelty, just a child carrying a responsibility that didn't belong to her. You don't have to carry that alone, he said. Goldie looked at him. I know, she replied. But I didn't know before. Officer Mercer stood and spoke clearly the way professionals do when every word matters. Goldie, I need to explain something, she said. There are rules that help keep kids safe, even when they're being kind. Goldie sat up straighter. Rules made sense to her. When a child is alone in public, Officer Mercer continued, we have to make sure they're protected. That means grown-ups handle the hard parts. Goldie's brows knit together. Does that mean I did bad? No, Inez said immediately. It means you did something good, and now it's our job to take care of you. Goldie looked down at her hands. Rowan could see the conflict in her relief tangled with fear. The fear of losing control, of being erased from her own purpose. What happens to the shoes? Goldie asked. Inez opened her bright tote and showed labeled bags. They go here, cleaned, repaired, given to people who need them. Goldie studied the labels closely. Even the last ones, she asked. Yes, Inez said, especially the last ones. Goldie exhaled slowly. Officer Mercer turned to Rowan. Sir, thank you for staying within boundaries. For the record, that matters. Rowan nodded. She's the priority. Goldie noticed that too. The door to the community center opened briefly, someone passing through. Goldie flinched, then steadied herself. What if someone takes the shoes away forever? She asked quietly. Then that's on us, Officer Mercer said. Not you. Goldie considered that. She reached into her tote and pulled out the smallest pair of shoes, the pink ones. These are not for the closet, she said firmly. Inez didn't argue. Who are they for? For my cousin, Goldie said. She's learning to walk. Inez smiled. Then they're hers. Goldie held the shoes to her chest, not possessive, just careful. Rowan felt something in him shift again. Not pity, respect. Footsteps hurried down the hallway. A woman in scrubs burst through the door, breathless eyes scanning wildly. Goldie. The room changed instantly. Goldie stood. Her aunt crossed the space in 3 steps and dropped to her knees in front of her, not grabbing, not scolding, just relief spilling out. Oh, baby, she said. I was so scared. Goldie hesitated just a second, then stepped forward and let herself be held. I didn't mean to make you scared, she said softly. I know, her aunt replied. I know. Officer Mercer explained everything, calm, clear, respectful. No accusations, just facts and care. I left her waiting where there was light, her aunt said, voice tight. I thought you did what you could, Officer Mercer said, and now we're all here. Goldie pulled back slightly and looked up at her aunt. I didn't take, she said quickly. I only fixed. Her aunt brushed Goldie's hair back gently. I believe you. Goldie's shoulders dropped for the first time all day. Rowan stood quietly to the side. He didn't need to be introduced. He didn't need thanks. But Goldie noticed him. She stepped away from her aunt and walked over to him, stopping at a respectful distance. You didn't touch, she said. You waited. Rowan smiled softly. Because that's how we keep you safe, Goldie nodded, satisfied. Inez approached with a small sticker and placed it carefully on Goldie's tote. It read, Helper. Goldie looked at it for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not big, not loud, but real. Outside, the rain began to ease, and for the first time the shoes were no longer alone. Goldie sat back down at the small table, the helper sticker bright against her faded tote. Her Aunt Nora took the chair beside her close enough to feel far enough to respect. Inez gathered the shoes, carefully placing them into labeled bags. Each label was calm, practical. Wash, repair, distribute, the kind of words that made chaos feel temporary. Officer Mercer completed her notes, then looked at Goldie gently. "Goldie, I need to ask you something important," she said, "and you can take your time." Goldie nodded. "When you were outside with the shoes," Officer Mercer continued, "did anyone tell you to do that?" Goldie shook her head. "No." "Did anyone make you do it?" "No." "Did anyone promise you something if you did?" Goldie frowned, confused. "No, I just did it." Nora's breath caught quietly. Rowan felt the weight of the questions, not suspicion, responsibility. The law checking every angle to make sure the child had not been pushed, pressured, or used. Officer Mercer nodded. "Thank you. That helps." Goldie tilted her head. "Am I in trouble?" "No," Officer Mercer said firmly. "You are not." Goldie seemed to accept that, but something still pressed behind her eyes. She looked at the bags of shoes, then at her aunt, then at Rowan. "I didn't want anyone to think I was poor," she said suddenly. The room stilled, not because the word was shocking, but because of how calmly she said it. "I didn't want them to look at me like they look at the shoes," Goldie continued, "like something they didn't choose." Rowan felt his chest tighten hard enough to hurt. Nora reached for Goldie's hand, but Goldie didn't cling. She just held on. "So I throw the bad shoes away first," Goldie said, "because if I take care of them, maybe nobody sees that nobody takes care of me yet." No one interrupted. No one rushed to comfort her with empty reassurances. Rowan lowered himself to one knee again, voice steady but raw. "Goldie," he said, "being 5 is already enough. You don't have to earn care." Goldie looked at him, eyes searching. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," Rowan said. "I'm sure." And for the first time, Goldie's mouth trembled, not in fear, in relief. Officer Mercer cleared her throat gently, not to interrupt emotion, but to guide it safely. "Goldie," she said, "there's one more thing we need to talk about." Goldie stiffened again instinctively. "Because you were alone outside," Officer Mercer continued. "We have to make sure there's a clear plan so that doesn't happen again." Nora nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll adjust my shifts." Officer Mercer raised a hand kindly. "This isn't about blame. It's about structure." Goldie listened carefully. Structure made sense. "There may be times," Officer Mercer explained, "when you need to stay inside a supervised place until an adult you trust comes for you." Goldie frowned. "Like waiting?" "Yes," Officer Mercer said, "but not alone, and not in alleys." Goldie glanced instinctively toward the door, toward the alley she'd known. "What about the shoes?" she asked. Inez answered softly. "The shoes will be taken care of by adults now." Goldie's fingers curled into the tote strap. "So I don't do it anymore." "You don't do it alone," Inez corrected. "And only when it's safe." Goldie looked down. This time the silence was heavier. Rowan recognized it instantly, the moment when kindness felt like something being taken away. "Goldie," he said carefully, "helping doesn't disappear just because adults help too." She looked up at him. "But what if I forget them?" "You won't." Rowan replied. "You're the one who taught us to notice the last ones." Officer Mercer nodded. "And because you spoke up, we can protect you better." Goldie processed this slowly. You could almost see the gears turning. "So, the rules are not to stop me," she said. "They're to stop bad things." "Yes," Officer Mercer said. "Exactly." Goldie exhaled. Nora squeezed her hand. "I'll never leave you waiting like that again," she said. Goldie didn't answer immediately. Then she said quietly, "Okay. But if I forget, remind me that I matter too." Nora swallowed hard. "I promise." Rowan looked away, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he respected the privacy of that promise. Protection, he realized, often looked like distance, and distance could still be love. Inez stood and gestured toward the back hallway. "Goldie," she said, "would you like to see the community closet?" Goldie hesitated, then nodded. They walked together into a bright room filled with shelves. Shoes, jackets, scarves, socks. Clean, sorted, waiting. Goldie stopped at the doorway. "All of these people need help?" she asked. "Yes," Inez said, "and all of them will be helped." Goldie stepped inside. Inez knelt beside her. "There's something else," she added. "Sometimes helpers also get help." Goldie frowned slightly. "That's allowed?" "Yes." Inez gestured to a low shelf. "Would you like to choose a pair?" Goldie looked instinctively at Nora. Nora nodded gently. "You can choose." Goldie approached the shelf slowly, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. She didn't grab. She didn't rush. She touched one pair, then another. Finally, she chose a simple pair of sneakers. Nothing fancy, solid, warm. "These," she said. Inez smiled. "Good choice." Goldie sat on the small bench and slipped them on. They fit. She stood. For a moment, she didn't move, like she was afraid the floor might feel different. Then she took one step, then another. Her posture changed, not dramatically, but unmistakably. Shoulders back. Chin up. "My feet are warm," she said quietly. Rowan felt the sound of it echo through him. Goldie looked down at the shoes, then up at everyone watching. "If my feet are warm," she said, "I can help longer." Rowan smiled, soft, careful. "Yes," he said. "And you can rest too." Goldie thought about that. Then she nodded. Outside, the rain stopped completely. And inside, for the first time, Goldie Vale stood in something that belonged to her, not because she earned it, but because she was 5 and someone finally said yes. The conference room at the community center was small, bright, and intentionally ordinary. No metal table, no raised voices, no symbols of authority meant to intimidate. That was the point. Officer Mercer closed her folder slowly and placed it flat on the table. The sound was soft, but final. "Here's where we are," she said. Goldie was found alone in a public alley. There is no indication of coercion, neglect, or harm. Her guardian arrived promptly and cooperated fully. Nora exhaled, shoulders slumping, as if she had been holding herself upright with pure will. Goldie sat beside her feet, swinging slightly above the floor. Her new shoes made a faint sound every time they brushed the chair leg. She noticed it. She always noticed. "Because Goldie is 5, Officer Mercer continued. "We are required to document a safety plan. This is not a punishment. It's a protection." Goldie raised her hand. Officer Mercer smiled. "Yes, Goldie, is this the part where I disappear?" Goldie asked calmly. The room went still. "No," Officer Mercer said immediately. "This is the part where we make sure you don't." Goldie nodded once, accepting the answer as if it were a fact of physics. Inez explained the support options: after-school supervision, supervised volunteer opportunities, community programs, where children could help with adults present. She spoke slowly, clearly, as if every word mattered. Goldie listened. Rowan watched from a chair near the wall. He said nothing. This was not his space to fill. He understood that now. Officer Mercer turned to Nora. "Ms. Vale, can you confirm that you will not leave Goldie unattended again?" "Yes," Nora said immediately. "I'll change my shifts. I'll use the center. I'll ask for help. I should have sooner." No one shamed her for that admission. "That's all we need," Officer Mercer said. "Honesty and a plan." Goldie looked up at her aunt. "You won't be mad if I ask for help?" she asked. Nora's voice broke, but she held steady. "I'll be mad if you don't." Goldie considered that. Then she turned to Officer Mercer. "Can I still help the shoes?" Officer Mercer smiled. "Yes, with adults. And breaks? And snacks?" Goldie smiled back, a small one, like she was trying it on. Rowan felt something unfamiliar press against his ribs. Not sorrow, not guilt. Relief. Because for the first time since the alley, the law wasn't a wall. It was a hand. The meeting ended without drama. No signatures that felt like chains. No warnings that sounded like threats. Just structure. Goldie walked beside Nora down the hallway, her steps lighter now that the floor felt warm beneath her feet. She stopped suddenly in front of the community closet door. "Can I say goodbye?" she asked. "To the shoes," Inez asked. Goldie nodded. They went inside together. The shelves were fuller now, organized, labeled, cared for. Goldie walked slowly along the rows, touching nothing at first. Just looking. "I thought if I didn't do it," she said quietly, "no one would." Inez knelt beside her. "Sometimes that's true, and sometimes people are waiting to be taught." Goldie looked at her. "I taught, yes," Inez said. "You did." Rowan stood at the doorway, giving space. Goldie noticed him anyway. "You didn't try to save me," she said. Rowan blinked. "I didn't," no, Goldie said. "You waited until it was safe." Rowan swallowed. That was important. Goldie nodded seriously. "I think that's how helpers work." She reached into her tote and pulled out the smallest pair of pink shoes. She placed them gently back inside. "These stay with me," she said. "For my cousin." Nora smiled. "Of course." Inez handed Goldie a laminated card with her name on it. Goldie Vale, community helper, supervised. Goldie traced the letters with her finger. "I don't have to hide anymore," she said, more statement than question. "No," Inez replied. "You don't." Rowan felt the urge to say something big, an offer, a promise, a solution. He didn't. Instead, he asked Inez quietly, "What do you need to make this work for more kids?" Inez answered honestly. "Time. Supplies. People who don't rush in and don't walk away." Rowan nodded. "Then I'll do that." He didn't say how. He didn't say how much. Goldie looked up at him. "Are you going now?" "Yes," Rowan said. "But I'll come back, if that's okay." Goldie thought carefully. Then she said, "Okay. But don't forget the last ones." Rowan smiled. "I won't." As he left the building, the city felt different, not kinder, more accountable. That night, Rowan sat alone in his office. The city glowed beyond the glass, expensive, endless, indifferent. He removed his watch and placed it beside his phone. Then carefully he took something from his coat pocket. A small sticker. Helper. He set it on the desk right in the center where his eyes would land every morning. Goldie's voice echoed in his mind, not loud, not dramatic. The last ones disappear. He opened his laptop and wrote 3 emails. No headlines, no press releases, no photos. One to his foundation director, one to a logistics partner, one to Inez. The subject line was the same on all 3 socks first. Across the city, Nora tucked Goldie into bed in their small apartment. The light was soft. The room smelled like clean laundry and chamomile. Goldie held the pink shoes close. "Aunt Nora," she asked. "Yes, honey, if I forget someday. Can you remind me I matter too?" Nora sat on the edge of the bed and brushed Goldie's hair back gently. "Every day," she said. "Even when you don't forget." Goldie smiled, satisfied. She placed the shoes neatly beside her bed, not hidden, not ashamed. Outside, rain began again, soft and steady. But somewhere in the city, shoes were being washed instead of thrown away. And a 5-year-old girl fell asleep knowing that help didn't mean disappearing. It meant being seen at exactly the right distance. Saturday arrived with pale winter sun and sidewalks still wet from last night's rain. The community center looked the same from the outside, plain brick, warm light inside. But something had changed. A new sign hung near the entrance. Supervised hours only, children must be with a registered guardian or staff. Goldie Vale read every word twice. Her Aunt Nora held her hand gently. Not tight, not controlling, just present. I'm still a helper, Goldie said, more like a promise than a question. You are, Nora replied. And today you're a helper who follows the safe rules. Goldie nodded, but her eyes lingered on the sign as if it were a locked door. Signs meant things. Signs decided who belonged. Inside, Inez Caro greeted them with a smile that tried to hide how tired she was. Her scarf was loosely wrapped, her hair pinned in a hurry. A clipboard lived in her hands now. Hey Goldie, she said. We've got a new system today. You're going to love it. Goldie's expression didn't change. I don't love new, she said honestly. Inez crouched. I know. But this new is to keep kids safe and keep the program open. Open, Goldie repeated. Inez nodded. We're being reviewed. Nora's brow furrowed. By who? A city compliance team, Inez said quietly. It's normal when programs grow fast. They want to make sure every donation is tracked, every volunteer is trained, every child is protected. It's good. It's a lot. Goldie looked around. The closet room was busier than before. Volunteers moved between shelves with scanners labeling bins and logging inventory. A few parents waited with kids in the lobby. The air smelled like detergent and cinnamon tea and something else, pressure. Goldie clutched her tote. The helper sticker was still there, but now it felt like it had to be proven. Rowan Kincaid arrived without announcement. No cameras, no entourage, just a dark coat and a calm face that tried to be steadier than his thoughts. He nodded at Nora first, respectful. Ms. Vale. Nora nodded back. Mr. Kincaid. Goldie saw him, and her shoulders relaxed 1 inch. You came back, she said. Rowan knelt so his eyes were level with hers. I said I would. Goldie studied his hands like she remembered the lesson safe people don't rush. Rowan's gaze flicked to the new sign and back. Big day, he asked Inez quietly. Inez exhaled. City compliance. They're checking everything, especially child safety protocols. They're also asking about donation handling privacy and whether any child is being showcased. Rowan's jaw tightened. We've never, I know, Inez cut in gently, but they're going to ask anyway. Goldie looked between them. She didn't understand the words, only the tension. Her feet shifted inside her warm shoes. Inez turned to Goldie. Today, you're going to be my official helper. That means you do one job. Goldie lifted her chin. What job? Inez handed her a stack of small stickers, wash, repair, ready, and one extra special keep. You'll label shoes with me, Inez said, only at this table. Only while Nora is here. If you need a break, you tell us. If you want to stop, you stop. Goldie held the stickers like they were delicate coins. Okay. Then a woman in a city-issued badge stepped into the room with a neutral expression and a notebook. Behind her came another staff member with a tablet. Ms. Caro, the woman asked. Inez straightened. Yes. We're here for the compliance review, the woman said. We'll observe operations review documentation, confirm safeguarding procedures, and verify that minors are not participating in prohibited volunteer work. Goldie's small fingers froze around the stickers. Prohibited? She whispered. Rowan glanced at Goldie, then back to Inez. He kept his voice calm. We'll cooperate fully. The compliance officer looked at Rowan. Recognition flickered. Not admiration, awareness, Mr. Kincaid, she said. Your foundation's involvement will also be reviewed for transparency. Rowan nodded. As it should be. Goldie looked up at Nora, eyes wide but steady. Do they take helpers away? She asked. Nora knelt close. No, baby. They make sure helpers are safe. Goldie swallowed. She stared at the table, at shoes that needed labels, at the smallest sizes, the worst ones, the last ones. Her voice came out soft. But what if they say I can't help? Rowan answered gently, choosing his words with care. Then we find a way that keeps you safe and still lets you be you. Goldie held on to that, because for the first time the obstacle wasn't a person who misunderstood her. It was a system deciding what kindness was allowed to look like. The compliance review began quietly like snowfall. No drama, just questions that fell one by one, piling into weight. The badge-wearing woman, Ms. Lark, watched the room. She didn't glare. She didn't smile. She observed. Who has access to donated items? She asked Inez. Trained volunteers only, Inez replied, showing a binder. Background checked where required. Check-in system. Inventory logs. And minors? Ms. Lark asked, eyes flicking to Goldie. Goldie sat perfectly still, stickers in a neat stack. Nora sat beside her, hand resting near but not on Goldie's shoulder. Minors may not handle donations unless it's part of a supervised educational activity and they are not doing labor, Inez said carefully. Goldie is not lifting, moving, or distributing. She's doing a supervised labeling activity with her guardian present at a stationary table. If that is not permitted, we will stop immediately. Rowan felt something twist inside him. He respected the rule, he did, but he hated how rules could make a child feel like she was a problem. Ms. Lark leaned closer to the table. Goldie, can I ask you something? Goldie looked at Officer Mercer, who had arrived as a supportive presence, then at Nora. Nora nodded gently. Goldie nodded too. Do you feel pressured to be here today? Ms. Lark asked. Goldie blinked. No. Do you feel like you have to help to be allowed here? Goldie hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes went to the "You Belong Here" bulletin board in the hallway, visible through the open door. Rowan held his breath, not because he feared the answer, but because he feared what it would cost her to say it out loud. Goldie finally spoke. I want to help, she said, but I want to be allowed even if I don't. Ms. Lark wrote something down. Thank you, she said, voice neutral. The neutralness made Goldie's shoulders rise again. Neutral sometimes felt like rejection. Inez quickly shifted the moment. Goldie, do you want to place the next sticker with me? Goldie nodded and reached for a shoe, small, worn, almost beyond hope. She didn't lift it fully. She slid it closer along the table, careful like it might bruise feelings. She placed a repair sticker gently on the inside sole. Ms. Lark watched. Then she said, Stop. The word wasn't sharp, but it landed hard. Goldie's fingers froze midair. Inez's face tightened. Is there an issue? Ms. Lark pointed to the shoe. That shoe is property of the donation stream. Until it's logged into inventory, no one, including a child, should be labeling it. It creates a chain of custody gap. Goldie looked up slowly. Confusion first, then a small flash of embarrassment. But it's just a sticker, Goldie whispered. It's still a record action, Ms. Lark replied. It matters. Rowan saw Goldie's cheeks turn pink. She drew her hands back to her lap and pressed them together as if to stop them from trying again. Nora leaned close. Goldie, you're not in trouble, she murmured. Goldie didn't respond. She stared at the shoe like it had betrayed her. Rowan felt the moment tipping into something dangerous, not physically, but emotionally, that old feeling of being too much wrong, not allowed. Officer Mercer stepped in smoothly. We can adjust, she said. Miss, Caro, log items first, then have Goldie place stickers on a separate practice sheet. No direct contact with donation goods until inventory entry is complete. Inez nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely, Ms. Lark wrote again. That's acceptable. Goldie's lips pressed together. Her voice came out tiny. So I can't help the last ones, she said. Rowan moved slowly, kneeling beside her chair, at a respectful distance, not touching. Goldie, he said, you didn't do anything wrong. The rule is about paperwork, not about your heart. Goldie looked at him, eyes shining with stubbornness and something like grief. I'm not mad, she whispered. I'm scared of what Rowan asked softly. Goldie swallowed. That they'll say I'm not allowed here unless I'm useful. Silence. Nora's eyes filled. but she kept her voice steady. You are allowed because you're Goldie. Goldie didn't seem convinced. She stared at the shoe again, the broken one, the last one. Then she slid the helper tote slightly under her chair, as if hiding her badge before someone could take it away. Rowan's chest ached, because he understood the worst pain wasn't being stopped. It was thinking you were only worth keeping when you were working. Rowan didn't argue with the compliance officer. He didn't throw money at the problem. He didn't demand exceptions. He did something harder. He learned the system, and he strengthened it. While Ms. Lark reviewed binders with Inez, Rowan stepped into the hallway with Officer Mercer. What's the cleanest way to protect the program and protect her? He asked, voice low. Officer Mercer didn't hesitate. Make sure the program can prove on paper what it already does in practice, and make sure Goldie hears clearly that her belonging is not conditional. Rowan nodded once, as if receiving an assignment. He returned to the room with a plan that didn't center him. Inez, he said calmly, pause Goldie's labeling. Shift her to observer-helper mode. She can choose stickers for a practice sheet, not inventory. I'll fund an extra scanner station and a part-time compliance admin so items are logged faster. No shortcuts. Inez blinked, relief and exhaustion mixing. Rowan, not for me, Rowan said. For the center. Ms. Lark glanced up. Funding is fine, she said, but it must be documented and non-coercive. Rowan nodded. Agreed. Document everything. Goldie sat silent, listening. She didn't understand scanners or admin support. She understood tone. She understood that adults were making decisions about her without making her feel small. Inez slid a blank sheet of paper toward Goldie. On it were outlines of shoes, little drawings. Goldie, Inez said softly, Can you help me with the practice sheet? You're going to teach our volunteers the categories. Goldie's eyes flicked up. Teach, yes, Inez said. Because you notice things we forget. Goldie stared at the paper. Her hands hovered. Am I allowed? She asked, voice barely there. Nora answered instantly. Yes. Officer Mercer nodded. Yes. Rowan leaned in, slightly careful. Yes. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. That was the line Goldie needed, the line that unhooked helping from being kept. Goldie reached for a sticker repair and placed it on the drawn shoe outline. Then another wash, then ready. Her shoulders lowered. Her breathing slowed. Ms. Lark watched, and for the first time her expression softened, not into a smile, but into something less rigid. After another set of questions, Ms. Lark closed her notebook. Ms. Caro, she said, your safeguarding approach is strong. Your documentation needs tightening, but your intent and procedure are aligned. Make the adjustments we discussed. You'll remain approved. Inez's eyes flashed with relief. Thank you. Goldie didn't celebrate. She simply looked at Inez and asked the only question that mattered. So, the last ones don't disappear. Inez crouched. Not anymore. Goldie stared at the practice sheet, then at her tote under the chair. Slowly, she pulled it back out and set it on her lap again. She touched the helper sticker like it was a heartbeat. Rowan stood and took a breath. Ms. Lark, he said, may I add one more support item to the program documented properly? Ms. Lark nodded cautiously. What Rowan's voice stayed gentle. A socks first bin, no inventory complexity. Just new socks packaged, distributed through registered partners. It's the simplest way to meet immediate needs without chain of custody risk. Ms. Lark considered, then nodded. That's acceptable. Goldie's head snapped up. Socks first, she whispered as if it were a spell. Rowan looked at her. You taught me that, he said. Goldie held his gaze, then smiled, small and brave. Nora gathered Goldie's coat. Ready to go, helper. Goldie nodded. At the door she paused and turned back to Rowan. Thank you for not making me special, she said. Rowan's throat tightened. You are special, he replied softly. But you don't need special rules to belong. Goldie thought about that, then nodded like she was filing it somewhere safe. They stepped outside into air that felt cleaner than before. Winter sun broke through cloud cover, thin but real. Goldie looked down at her warm shoes. Then she looked up at Nora. "Can we come back next time?" she asked. Nora smiled. "Yes. And you can help. Or you can just be 5. Goldie blinked, surprised, then accepted it like a gift. Behind them, inside the community center, the new sign stayed on the wall. But it didn't feel like a locked door anymore. It felt like a promise. The change didn't arrive loudly. It arrived in boxes, plain cardboard. No logos, no speeches, just stacks of new socks, soft, warm, neatly folded, delivered to community partners across the Seaport District. "Socks first," the label read. Goldie Vale stood on a small step stool beside Inez as volunteers checked items in and out. She wasn't touching donations. She wasn't labeling inventory. She was doing something simpler. She was pointing. "That one is for slow walkers," she said, nodding at a man with tired shoes. "That one is for kids who grow fast." She added, eyeing a shelf of small sizes. Nora sat nearby with a cup of tea, watching without hovering. Rowan visited once a week, always after asking. Always without staying long. He learned the rhythm of the place, the quiet thank yous, the nods, the way dignity moved when no one tried to film it. Goldie noticed everything. One afternoon, she looked up at Rowan and said, "People don't hide their feet anymore." Rowan followed her gaze. Shoes lined the floor by the door. Clean, paired, chosen. "You helped them feel seen," he said. Goldie shook her head. "We did. That mattered." Outside, winter loosened its grip, puddles dried. People walked a little easier. The city didn't change all at once. But somewhere between a bin of socks and a 5-year-old who knew when to step back, the last ones stopped disappearing. Late one night, Rowan sat alone in his office. The city hummed below traffic light ambition. He opened a drawer he rarely touched. Inside was the helper sticker Goldie had given him, slightly creased now, still bright. He placed it beside a small framed note written in uneven crayon lines, "Socks are the beginning." Rowan smiled. He had built companies, systems, solutions. But this came from listening long enough to learn something obvious. He thought of Goldie's question weeks ago. "Am I allowed, even if I don't help?" He typed a short message to his foundation team, "Measure success by who feels less invisible. Start small. Stay accountable." Then he closed the laptop. Rowan stood at the window and watched people cross the street below. Different speeds, different stories, same ground. He understood now real change didn't come from being the center. It came from holding the edge steady so others could stand. Somewhere in the city, a child slept with warm feet and no plan to disappear. Rowan turned off the light and left the sticker where he could see it in the morning. Spring came quietly. On a Saturday morning, Goldie arrived at the community center holding a folded piece of paper. She walked straight to Rowan, stopped at the right distance, and held it out. "For you," she said. Rowan took it carefully and opened it. Inside, written in careful crayon letters, "I don't fix goodbyes anymore. People say hi now." Rowan felt his breath catch, not sharply, just enough to remind him he was alive. "That's wonderful," he said. Goldie nodded. "The last ones got picked." Nora smiled from across the room. Inez waved volunteers through the door. Officer Mercer nodded from the hallway. No clipboard today, just quiet approval. Goldie slipped her warm shoes back on and headed to the table, not to work, but to draw. Rowan watched her sit, legs swinging, humming softly to herself. She wasn't solving anything. She was being 5. And that was the ending. Not a rescue. Not a miracle. Just a child who no longer needed to hide kindness in an alley. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, one small life stood exactly where it belonged. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.